Every day, the past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to
Dreaming of a life in Portugal? Or maybe you're just curious about what it would be like to move here. My family and I began planning for our move way back in 2020. It took 2 more years to make it happen, and it has been quite an adventure. Before you pack your bags, listen in to hear the real stories of those who've already taken the leap. Every other Wednesday, we dive deep into the experiences of individuals and families who chose to make Portugal their home. Discover their motivations, the challenges they faced, and the unexpected joys they encountered along the way. We'll explore their preparation strategies, navigating bureaucracy, and the realities of building a new life in a foreign land. Whether you're seriously considering a move or simply curious about life in Portugal, these authentic accounts will offer invaluable insights and help you decide if this sun-drenched country is someplace you want to relocate to, or maybe just visit on vacation. Welcome to Mover, Portugal Unpacked.
I ain't going back, I'm not falling. I'll push all my chips and call all in. I'll bet on myself, you keep
I am getting asked questions left and right these days about why I moved to Portugal and how my American friends can also do this. So I felt like it was time to share stories from people who have made the move across the water to start a new life in a new culture. So I decided to reach out to friends here in Portugal to begin collecting interviews, and my friend Jason Goncalves agreed to share his experience. Jason and I met a couple of years ago, shortly after I moved here. We lived in the same apartment complex, and I just remember being so happy that there was someone close by who spoke English. But don't let his beautiful English fool you. He's fluent in both English and Portuguese. This has been a huge help for him in his career as a real estate agent here in Portugal. Today, he is here to tell us about his journey to live in Portugal, and maybe he'll give us a few tips on finding a place to rent or buy once you get here if you're coming. Jason, thanks so much for agreeing to do this.
Well, thanks for having me. I don't know if fluent Portuguese is the ideal, but it's good enough to get by at least. So I can have a conversation and communicate fairly well, I think.
I think
But fluent
compared
is the
to me, I'm going to say you're fluent. So
best. Thank you.
I just have this vivid memory of it was our first day. We had just moved into our new apartment in the complex, and there was a party downstairs. And so we were like, oh, this is nice. We're going to get to meet all the neighbors. And I remember standing there thinking, oh, I cannot communicate with anyone here. And my Portuguese was even worse at that point. And I remember hearing you and thinking, English, there's somebody I can talk to. And you were very, very kind to me and told me, you'll get there eventually. And, a couple of years later, I'm much closer to speaking Portuguese, but definitely not fluent myself.
Well, pretty good. I mean, the first year was a little bit of a struggle for me too. I mean, I have a Portuguese background. My parents are both Portuguese, but I rarely spoke Portuguese back in Canada. So it was definitely a struggle for the first year. My telltale is if you can start picking up on Portuguese jokes, then you're pretty close.
I'm still a long ways away. I I'm happy when I know what the total is at the grocery store without looking at the little register thing. I'm like, oh, I understood the numbers. So,
Baby steps, baby steps.
yes. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to Portugal.
Well, I'm Canadian. I'm from Toronto originally. Canadian Portuguese. I actually had a fairly difficult time in my last years in Canada. I only had one relative that was left. It was my father. He unfortunately was sick, and I took care of him for about 2.5 years before until he passed. And then after he passed, I didn't have any family, direct family left in Canada. So I found myself traveling here like 5, 6 times a year just to be closer to my mother, my uncles, my cousins, and everything. So a big motivator was to be closer to family, but also I always felt more comfortable with the idea of quality of life here in comparison to North America. Um, so I think it was a little bit of, the morals of the people are a little bit different here and being closer to family. And then, people take the time to get to know each other. They take the time to, get together, which in the North American rat race, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So I think it was more so, but family was definitely the main factor.
It's interesting that I like that you said North America because we lived in Washington State. The last few years we were in the States. And of course, that's close to Canada. We would go to Canada
Yeah.
frequently. We had some friends there. And I had an American friend who had moved from Seattle up to Vancouver, British Columbia. And I remember her saying, and this was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, she moved up there. But I remember her saying, I want to go to a culture that is better than the United States. And at this point, Canada is being called the little United States. I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like the culture in Canada has shifted significantly. Could be because of all the Americans moving up there, but it's
I do.
shifted a lot in the last 10 to
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Canada's just not what it used to be. I remember hearing glory stories about Portuguese people moving to Canada 40 years ago, and you can still buy property fairly cheap and make a good living and kind of set up your family. But with the way things are getting organized in the West, it's becoming more and more difficult with just taxes. And it seems like there's some sort of agenda that's going on with pushing the West a little bit out of the scene. So there was multiple factors, and when I moved here, it was funny. A lot of my friends ended up calling me saying like, "Oh, the first year they're like, what are you doing?" And then by the second or third year, I think I know of like 4 or 5 friends that had actually moved to Europe
Yeah,
because of what's
yeah.
going on over there. Yeah, so it seems
Well,
like it was a good timing for me.
thus the podcast. I thought, man, people need to hear the stories of those of us that have done this and what it looks like for us. So you have dual citizenship then. So you're a Canadian
Yeah.
citizen and a Portuguese citizen.
Yeah, so I am dual citizen. So both my parents with Portuguese heritage, they were kind enough to go to the embassy and make sure I was registered with Portuguese as well. So it was a little bit of an easier process, but I essentially had to do the same things as like if you were a North American coming here without, besides the D7 factor, but I still had to get a registered NIF, which is like your tax number.
Hmm.
Uh, because when you're dual citizen but overseas, you don't get a tax number. So I had to get here, go through the process, get a little bit of a runaround, and then finally get the tax number, which was a little bit of a pressure for timing because my shipping container came and I couldn't get my shipping container released without a tax number. And the rent
Yes.
per day on a shipping container at the docks is not cheap.
Do you mind sharing with us how much that is, just in case anybody out there runs into
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. So I think at the time it was around 680 euros a day.
Oh my
Mhm. Yeah.
goodness.
So I
Whew.
I buckled down pretty quickly to get my tax number as fast as possible. So there are a
So
couple of tricks.
if anybody's listening, a tax number is the equivalent, if you're a US listener, which is the only other wheelhouse I really know, but it's the equivalent of our social security number, which we typically don't think of as a tax number, but that's absolutely what it is. So, so what are the tips and tricks? How did you get this nailed down?
So, I mean, for example, we're in the West area. So things in smaller cities tend to move a little bit slower. So I went to the civil center where you go book your appointment, stand there for hours on end. And then they had to give me an appointment, which would have been, I think it was 9 days later. So if you do the math, 680, 9 days, it's an expensive wait period.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
so luckily, if you are in a smaller city along the Silver Coast, there is a way that you can kind of bargain to get the appointment scheduled in Lisbon, and then you can pay a fast track fee essentially. where it's like an urgency fee, where at the time I think it was 85 euros, but I was able to get that tax number the same day.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
way
So,
better. 85 is way better than 680. Just
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So they did have to ask some questions. I'm almost certain that if you just tell them you want it the same day, you can do it in Lisbon. But I had a justification reason, so that might have been an indicator as well. I didn't stick around to find out. I was in a rush.
I can understand that. Yeah, I think that these little things are, hmm, we'll call them charming for lack of a better word, that you
Yeah,
can go to one town in Portugal and get something done a certain way, or just go to another town and actually have more or less success depending on the town.
yeah,
You know, something else that I've noticed is, and this hurts me because I don't have the language skills, but of course, my husband Lucas is fluent in Portuguese. But most of the time, we are more successful if we go someplace in person.
yeah,
Because in the United States, and I think Canada too, a lot of what we do is online or by phone. So you can
yeah,
call, there's an automated whatever that you go through. You don't necessarily talk to someone, or you can go online and there's a chat bot that you can use, or you can
yeah,
send an email and have some kind of whatever. But here, it seems in
yeah.
person is the best way.
I would typically recommend in person. I'm a little old-fashioned in the sense that I like doing things in person because I feel like you'll get them done a little bit faster. But it's funny because Portugal's, in certain senses, like chat boxes, things like that, they're really behind. But then also we have something like MBWay, which doesn't exist in North America and is super useful.
Yes, yes, it is.
So it's funny, depending on the situation, there are some things to highlight that are positives here. But I would say the slow pace environment will take a while to kind of get used to as you're moving here. And then getting used to the fact you have to do things in person. Rule of thumb that I've noticed is you can do about 3 items per day between the wait time, the travel time, speaking to them. Three is the number of max items you can take care of in one day.
Well, and Lucas and I say, don't expect to get anything accomplished on the first visit.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I mean, because so many times you get there and it's just, if you live here and you're part of the home culture and this is where you've grown up, then you know all the things you need to take.
Yeah.
But that's not always obvious to those of us that move here. But speaking to your point, that kind of goes along, what I just said goes along with the slower culture, which is an okay thing, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
just kind of get used to, okay, so today was going to wherever and learning what I needed rather than having the expectation of actually accomplishing the task. But
Yeah.
I love what you said. There are some ways that they are so far ahead in Portugal. We didn't know this. We were on our way in a taxi to the airport, and we know the taxi driver. And I asked him, this is terrible. And I shouldn't be saying it on my very first podcast doing this, but in the United States, we have a ton of dead animals on our highways and we call them roadkill. And it's because,
Yeah.
you know, the poor little critters run across there and get hit by cars. But you hardly see this I've not seen any actually here in Portugal. So I asked our
Yeah.
taxi driver, and he said there's actually little borders put up for the big highways. They have a fencing
Yeah.
that we can't see,
Oh,
but it keeps animals from going up onto the highways.
yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, I don't think I've seen roadkill here.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah.
And it
I
seems
never
like
even thought
it
about
would be
that.
so easy to do, to just have
Yeah.
this little, fencing. Obviously, I don't think it's like it doesn't go all the way along, but where animals might
Probably.
be able to get up and it's a more rural place, they have I think it's a
Yeah.
fencing is what he called it. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So I thought so too. Okay, I digress. But so you were in Canada. You decide that you are going to go ahead and move to be closer to your mom. What kinds of things did you have to do to prepare for this kind of move? Because you've already referenced shipping your goods and the
Yeah.
container storage, but this is a different kind of move, right? Like for us, I think you have two pathways. You bring everything and
Yeah.
you do that path, or you sell everything and what you can fit into your suitcases is what you bring with you. So tell
Yeah.
us about yours.
So I knew I wanted to, so my situation was a little bit different because I was leaving Canada essentially to become a permanent resident here. I still keep my Canadian citizenship, but I'm no longer a primary residence there. So with that, there's a couple of advantages that I'm allowed to bring one car that's not taxed. So that's an advantage. You can bring one vehicle. Vehicles tend to be pretty expensive in Portugal because of the double tax
Hmm.
um, in comparison to North America. So I was able to bring my car over, which I love my car. So brought that, didn't have to pay taxes on that. And because I was already going to bring my car on a shipping container, instead of renting half a container, I decided to rent a full one so that I could bring all my goods with me. This is very much in the sense of it depends on the value of the goods that you have. And if you've invested quite a bit of money in certain goods, then I would recommend to bring those with you because furniture can be expensive here
Yeah, it
as
can.
well. But I always liked investing in items. So packed everything up, put it on the shipping container. Took over a month to get everything properly packaged, though, because it's going on a shipping container on a boat for a long period of time in the open ocean. So you got to worry about like humidity, water damage. So to pack one single item for a move, typically it's pretty simple, but when you're putting in a shipping container, it's bubble wrap, sealant, towel, bubble wrap again, and then put it in the box.
Ah,
Yeah. So it was like a month of consistently doing that. Um, but I went to the embassy ahead of time, organized my paperwork, notified them in Canada that I would be moving over. And then I actually had a contact of a lawyer that specialized in getting all your documents set up ahead of time. So once I had all my prep work done and all my paperwork done, all I had to do was send copies to my contact here in Lisbon, and he could speed up the process. So by the time I even got here, my car was already registered as well.
oh, nice.
Yeah, not the license plate portion, but the fact of the VIN number was already registered and existed in Portugal. And then I had 6 months to get Portuguese license plates for the car. So that was a huge weight off my shoulders to kind of have people. And it's also one of those things where Portugal's very much still in kind of the Wild West. You have to know which people to talk to and which ones not to talk to, because things can go bad pretty quickly if it's not a trusted source. So that's always kind of daunting and scary. But luckily, I mean, knew this people through family friends, and he's been in the industry for 30 years, so credibility. And he wasn't too expensive. I think I paid to register the car, take care of all my documents, transfer all the documents from the Canadian embassy to here and get everything registered. I think I paid 1,500 euros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah.
not as much as I thought you were going to say.
No, no, no. It was actually I was expecting to pay way more.
Yeah.
And then when it was 1,500, it was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I mean it's definitely a process. I would say that if you're going to be doing a primary residence change, give yourself a good 3 months to get your documents in order, organize a schedule, and even with 3 months of planning, there could always be delays. So
Well, and you mentioned something really important. We used an attorney also, and I think that that is just helpful. I know
yeah,
that once you get here, you have certain appointments that you have to go through to have your documents processed.
yeah,
And especially if you don't speak Portuguese, that can be quite daunting. And
yeah,
our attorney spoke English and went with us to all of those visits as well. And yes, I think it was, I want to say 200 euros each time. but he only had to go twice, and there were three of us that he was helping get processed. So,
Right.
in the
So
grand scheme of things, I would rather have my documents processed. And you also have an advocate that's there with you because not that anybody's trying to do anything wrong. However, sometimes when you go to those kinds of meetings, you have somebody that says, well, you don't have this, and this is done wrong, shoves the paperwork back at you.
yeah, and
Next,
figure it
you
out.
know?
Yeah.
Right. And perhaps there is something, because this is what happened to me, actually. My attorney was there to say, okay, well, don't give us our paperwork back yet because of this, this, and this. And he knew about certain laws in Europe. I mean, I just would not have known to give pushback. As an
Yeah.
American, I would have, if I would have been by myself, I would have been like, "Oh, okay, and left." So that
No, but it's
attorney
true.
piece is really big.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. The fact that it's stressful enough traveling to a new country and making a decision to move to a new country. So having an attorney, in this case, the person I used wasn't an attorney. It's a trusted, it's a specialized immigration person that has an office. But I obviously deal with attorneys now. I have a couple attorneys on my team that specialize in people that are, relocating from the US or Canada to Portugal. And I wish I did the same because it was so much easier with the attorneys. I still had a pleasant surprise with my guy, but I realized with the attorneys I know today, it could have been way easier.
Yeah. Well, one
Yeah.
of the platforms that's going to be sponsoring this podcast, that I can't name their name yet, but because they are finishing up all of their loose ends
Uh,
right now. But when they're
okay.
up and running, they're going to sponsor this podcast, and one of their goals is to have a list of trusted attorneys,
Oh,
real
good.
estate agents, plumbers, electricians.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This is place to go to the grocery store. Here's your common things that you might need help with. Because, again, speaking to your point, I don't think that anybody's intention is ever to perhaps perpetuate a scam. However, sometimes we have uninformed people who think that they're informed enough to help us, and we find out that really they're about as informed as we are. So then we've paid somebody and we have no new information, right? I think that a lot
Yeah.
of us that move here find ourselves in that situation. It's very frustrating. So to
Yeah.
have people that, so when we link all of your stuff today, listeners, Jason has said he knows some people. So as you're
Yeah.
looking for houses, what things you might need to do to move to Portugal, I can see you being a really good resource or connector for people
Yeah.
wanting to do
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. Idea is to make it as easy as possible since we've already gone through it. And it's
Yeah.
half the reason why I ended up in real estate was just because the process was a little sticky. And then the experience of going through trying to sell my first property here, I felt like could have been done better. And then I decided not to list with that agent and decided to become an agent myself and did it myself and essentially hit the targets that they said weren't attainable. So it was funny how it all kind of worked out.
And kudos to you because this is another thing that happens when you make a move like this is you end up with two groups, I think, of people. Your new Portuguese friends that take a
Yep.
little longer to make but are I love my Portuguese friends.
Precious.
I mean,
Yeah.
they are amazing. And then we have other people who have done this. Either
Yeah.
they consider themselves either expats or immigrants. And we all bond together because we offer resources to one
Yeah.
another as well as a common language usually. So I can see you being very help. I know you've already helped our friend group quite a bit in the
A little bit.
purchase and
Yeah.
sell and building of property.
Yeah, a
so
little bit here and there. Yeah.
so we're going to talk more about that in just a second, not necessarily that project, but before we leave your personal move story, what do you think was the most challenging part of your move?
My previous career was very high stress, high pace, and always on the go, go, go. And I struggled for the first year to kind of get used to the rhythm here of how things are done. So for me, the biggest struggle was actually just going through the process of like, okay, I'm gonna go here. It's an appointment, but this appointment will probably not achieve anything because I'll need another two or three appointments in order to achieve my goal. That was the biggest struggle for me because I think we're just used to being, just bam, 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 everything's done, let's go, processed, and it's a little bit of a struggle. So, and it's also confusing at the beginning of which office takes care of what. And then
Hmm.
depending on who you get that day, if they're not in a great mood, they'll probably just send you to the other office, even though that's the office you're supposed to be at. And then you kind of got to go through a little bit of a loop. Whereas today's day and age, I know exactly everything. So if someone tries to
Yes.
pass the buck, I'm like, no, it's here, 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 here you go, kind of thing.
Right.
But
Yes. That happens too. That's not us. You need to go here.
yeah, yeah, no, that doesn't work anymore. Um, but I think it was just getting adjusted to the lifestyle here, and like kind of, slowing down your pace and appreciating the time throughout the day a little bit more, and then, appreciating the fact that okay, it's going to take a couple more appointments, but it's not that high stress lifestyle of, everything's go, go, go. But it was definitely an adjustment. That was my hardest obstacle on a personal level. And I think from a paperwork aspect thing, it's the different offices between the city aren't all connected.
Mhm.
So you handle something in one place, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be handled at the other city
Right.
office. So you can kind of get into a little bit of trouble with that. Not big trouble, it's just the fact that it's more work. And then kind of getting used to that, it's where not the entire system is integrated. If you have to make an adjustment, you have to make an adjustment across the board. But once you know that, it's pretty simple and easy.
But there are multiple systems that are like that. Another one that
Yep.
immediately comes up for me is the medical system. I have
Yeah.
never had to carry my x-rays with me to my
Yeah.
different medical providers. It was, oh, you're going to go to Dr. So and so. We will get your records to them. And
Yeah.
of course, everything's digital in the US. But there are many systems here that are not integrated because
Yeah.
the expectation is that we are the intermediary and we are the connector, the
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. From a health standpoint, well, I don't, are you going to COOF or are you
Oh,
using the
I'm
public
going
system?
everywhere right now. So I got a toe in every pond in the medical system here. But
Okay. All right. I decided to go with COOF right off the bat. Um, Coming from a free healthcare system in Canada, there's some downsides to the fact of it being free healthcare. The wait times, disorganization, this, that, and the other. And then when you get to Portugal, to have a healthcare plan that covers everything for less than 100 euros to go to a
yeah.
private hospital, I was like, yeah, no, I'll definitely pay, 80 euros to have a super extensive health plan at a private hospital rather than getting into the public sectors. But that's just a personal experience being Canadian and having to deal with the free healthcare systems.
Well, I have private, but like I said, we've gone public for a couple of things too.
Right.
But my biggest glory story, I guess, is that unexpectedly I had to have cataract surgery. Like I had a very rapid
Well,
developing cataract. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was anyway. But all of my appointments, the surgery, I had to have surgery. Um, all of my follow-up care and all of my medication total was 250 euro.
yeah.
And I had gallbladder surgery, which was also an outpatient surgery before we left the United States. and I paid 900. I didn't pay this all on my own. My school district paid a portion of it, but my insurance for myself and my daughter was 950, I think, per month. And for that gallbladder surgery, I paid thousands after
Yeah,
my
it's crazy.
insurance, thousands of dollars. So when they said 250, I kept thinking this is just for the appointments. I kept waiting
Right.
for the
Yeah.
bills to come in and they just didn't. So, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have anything negative at this point in contrast to say about that system other than the fact that it was a shock to me when I had a mammogram and the lady chased me down the hall saying, "Don't you want your x-rays?" And I'm like, "I take those?"
Yeah, yeah. I th I, th I think the healthcare system's like maybe North America 45 years ago, where it's like
Yes.
it's like everyone's doing a great job, the machines are new, but the mentality is like, here's your paperwork and don't lose it because you need to bring it back.
And if you're like me and you've had to go a few times, eventually they get to know your name and they
Yeah,
talk to you. And, so
yeah,
yeah, it's been charming to me. Again, I say charming for both ways. Sometimes
yeah.
that's the word I use when I'm less than charmed, but overall, I love living here, but I do think it's an adjustment. So that
Yeah,
leads me to
absolutely.
my next question, which is how has life here been different than you anticipated? And I think you've kind of already answered it. But, when you
Yeah.
anticipated moving here, I know for me, I saw a certain vision. And then when I got here, I was like, well, this is really quite different than what I imagined it would be.
Well, I mean, I came here so often to visit family beforehand anyways, so I had a little bit of a cheat sheet in the idea of what life was going to be like to a certain degree. And because I had such a stressful end time in Canada before moving here, I decided to my plan was to take 2 years off and just enjoy life and relax. Uh, but being from North America, we can't last that long. So got back into the hustle bustle pretty quickly. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I had a certain expectation. I think a more realistic expectation from being here multiple times. So I think transition wise, um, I didn't feel that much off what I was expecting, besides kind of what we touched on, just the pace of things. And it was also strange that, you get invited to all these dinners and coffee shops and things. People make the time out of their schedule to get together, right?
Yeah.
And whereas like North America, it would be like, no, work, 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 work. I mean, when I first moved here, the first year, I think I spent more time with my friends from Canada living in Portugal while they came to visit me than when I was actually living in Canada and I would never see them.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
that was pretty comical because I would have friends that would come and visit all the time. And that those 2 weeks or 3 weeks that they would stay with me, that would make up for trying to see each other for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was a pleasant surprise too, actually.
And there is an adjustment phase that you have to go through to get used to the pace of things. I do, so I don't know if you know this, but I have another podcast and it's about burnout because
Oh,
I
cool.
too could not move here and just be like, well, I'm going to relax and enjoy my life. I'm like, no, I have to be doing something. So I
Yeah.
started a podcast about burnout and it's really around educator burnout, but it's kind of transitioned to lots of people are burnout, especially in North America. And this piece of things is part of that, part of the burnout culture that has become everyone's lives in Canada
Yep.
and the United States. It is, if you're not doing, you should be doing. And
Yep.
Lucas, my husband, he says, the United States is, and I would say, well, North America is very efficient. We have very
Yep.
efficient systems, but we have very stressed out, disconnected people also.
Yeah. Very much agree. So yeah.
So it does take a while to For me, it was like, what do you mean you want to go have coffee? What are you
Yeah,
trying to get from me? I barely know
the
you.
hidden agenda.
Why aren't you at work? So,
Yeah,
how do you have time for coffee? You have
yeah.
coffee every day. I was very cynical about people's motives and what they were doing. And now, well, this is your story, not mine, but I have to tell you, I made everybody in my family mad. I hadn't been back to the United States for 2 years, and I went back in the fall. And I have
Oh,
two
okay.
I have two adult daughters and my sister that were mad at me the whole time, saying, you have to make a plan for the day. What are we doing today? And I was saying,
Well,
well, I don't care. What are we going to do? And that
yeah,
just was never who I was before. But here, it's okay to be that way. It's okay to not have a plan. It's okay to
yeah,
just do what you want to do when you want to do it.
yeah. Just
We still
receive
have
the day.
responsibilities, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
that's the nice adjustment side of things, I would say.
it is. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily feel nice at first. It feels foreign, like you
Yeah.
said.
Well, and funny
Um,
enough, I haven't even gone back to Canada yet.
really?
I have no desire to go back. I be truthfully.
Okay. So when you go back, let me know. I see a
Yeah.
second podcast episode coming your way. It's going to be like,
Ye-
Jason,
Yeah, I
what did
don't
you
know. We'll see.
experience? Okay. Well, when you're not doing podcasts for friends who, beg you to do this, um,
No, not at all.
you are a real estate agent.
Yep.
So, what's some advice you would give people about moving here or considering this kind of move?
So I think the most important is having it's a trusted contact, your first point of contact, and that contact should have an organized team to make things simple. It's terrible to say, but Portugal, because those items that we were talking about in city council aren't all aligned, the paperwork might not necessarily be 100% truthful. And there have been horror stories in the past of people expecting to buy a certain property and then they're buying a property somewhere else. Uh, and as a North American hearing this, you're like, how is that even possible? But it happens because the systems are not like how they are there, and real estate is not regulated like it is in North America. Um, so essentially, anyone can become a real estate agent working under someone else's license,
Yeah.
which is a little scary if you think about it, because our most important asset is essentially our house.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and then it's just a bunch of people that, might have just nothing wrong at working at a grocery store, but like one day was a cashier and all of a sudden is an agent, and you just called this agency and that might have been the person assigned to you.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having a strong point of contact of someone that you can trust, someone that's going to make the process easy, um, someone that can make things ahead of time for you and is going to give you truthful information about certain visas. Whereas, like, Golden Visa was all the rage, and people still use Golden Visa as a sales tactic for North Americans, but it's like a 5 to 6 year delay
Yeah.
to get your golden visa. So realistically, it would be better that we set up all your paperwork, get your tax number, get everything you need in order to purchase the property, and just start a D7 process.
Right.
Because that could actually get done within a year's time frame.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't have to spend 500 grand, 500,000 euros on property just because of the difference of the passport,
Yep.
right? And then wait 6 years. And then what happens is you're essentially stuck because you have to be here for the 6 years. Well, granted,
Right.
with some flexibility of time frame and this, that, and the other. So I think it's just, getting the right information from the right people and having a trusted contact is, I think, priority number one is just having that right person. Um, and then I think from there, everything else kind of falls into place, right? Paperwork wise, all of that's taken care of for you if you're working with someone that does that entire process, right? I think that's the best piece of advice I can give you is do your background research, you know, check the history record of someone, of, their sales performance or the lawyer, the law firm, whatever it is. Don't just take a referral and run with it. Do a little bit of research. I think that's
Yes.
super important as well. And make an educated decision um, without influence of others. It's good to have recommendations, but I still think it's important that you do your own research and pick someone that's trusted, right?
I really appreciate that. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you and your team do for people who contact you who are wanting to move here from other countries? Because it's not just the United States. We have people moving from
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a Holland couple that was here yesterday. So, I mean, Europe to Europe, it's a lot easier. But the idea is we have an entire team in process. So, first point of contact is me, where, gather your information, figure out what your wants and needs are, what area you want to be, and then we'll do kind of a mapped out research area of properties that make sense for you and kind of dim down. Uh, from there, we'll do a little bit of an interview process to figure out. Let me get rid of this call real quick. Sorry about that. And then we'll do a little bit of an interview process to see, do you want to have things in order beforehand or once you're here? Do you want to be part of the process? Or do you want things to be done before you get here, or at least the registered tax number, right?
Right.
I've had overseas clients that have purchased property just from a video call, and then they'll just come to the property once all the paperwork's said and done. That's a big one. I don't like that as much because it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is.
um, so I prefer if you come and take a look at the property with me. Um, but it's important to know that there's the streamlines in process. So there's proper lawyers in place that can handle everything for you. Um, if you, depending on the situation, I mean, we have some people from Israel that are coming, and our lawyers are able to help them get their money transferred safely and correctly. So the team structure is there. So we go through the step process, and based on the interview of what it is that you'd like done, that's kind of the way we try to do it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, we bought our property sight unseen, but we had a really good point of contact person that was helping us, actually a couple of people that were helping us. However, we do know too, I just want to put a plug in for this because I know the people that we worked with had and I think you do too. A lot of people come here and they spend, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks traveling around, seeing what looks right for them. And during that time is when they meet with the team.
Yeah.
And the team can then take them around and show them a variety of things. And they get an idea for the lay of the land, the area that they want to be in, and kind of the types of structures that are available here in Portugal because they are
Yeah.
uniquely Portuguese. It's not, you're not seeing too many ranch style 3 bedroom, 2 bath homes
Mhm.
here with a, basement and all of
Yeah.
those things. You have those things, but it's very Portuguese. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have a great option of ruins. So we're technically, we also have a renovation team. I set up a renovation team for foreigners because I found that when I was getting referrals, sometimes there would be a referral tax on top, or not
yeah.
referral, but like a stranger tax on top, where it's a little bit more expensive than it should be.
Yeah.
So we set up, we're doing a ruin for a French couple. And that's kind of a nice way to fast track, the project process because something already exists there. You just have to stay within those parameters and then build a brand new house. But only having to use a license for, let's say, a roof, for example,
Yeah.
which makes things a lot easier. So those are like little tricks and tips that make life a lot easier as well.
Well, something that realtors do here in Portugal too, which this is not how it is in the US, is they help find rentals. So if you're
Yep.
moving here and you're having a property renovated, your realtor is also your best friend in helping you find a place to stay
Yep.
again, where you're not going to get scammed in some lease that has you on your keister, a
Yeah.
few months after you move in. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they really help you with that. So realtors actually have a very unique position here in Portugal to be one of the best friends that somebody
Yeah.
moving over can have in their corner.
Yeah. You almost become like a distant relative, like that weird uncle. Weird uncle that kind of helps to figure everything out and you see once in a while. That's kind of
Yeah.
how you end up being. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think that's going to be very helpful. So I think we're about ready to finish up. But before we
Yep.
go, tell me, what do you like most about Portugal?
Ooh, I think it's quality of life. I think it's the fact that you can travel all across Portugal in a short period of time and see so many different things, from mountaintops to beaches, and you don't have to drive very far, right? I mean, from where we are in the Oeste area, we're only 45 minutes from Lisbon, 3 hours from Algarve, 2 hours from Porto, 3 hours from Serra da Estrela. And then even interiors, there's these beautiful, all stone little villages in the mountain ranges in the interior of Portugal. Um, and then, I mean, you can be in a mountain in the morning and then the beach literally a couple hours later.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it's just the quality of life here and the moral compass of people here are a little bit different. I think there's a little bit of a charm to that where people have a little bit different morals and different expectations, and it's not just cutthroat, go, go, go kind of thing. I think that's
Yep.
the best way I can explain it. Yeah.
I love that. I like the same things. So, all of Jason's contact information will be in today's show notes in case he inspired you to begin this process for yourself. Jason, thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast and share your
No,
story.
thank you for the invitation, and then it was fun.
I hear destiny and it's calling. I'll keep my head up high through the downs and lows, and we're all going live. Still nobody knows, but I'ma choose what's right and take what comes and goes. And ain't no one in life holding me back no more.
Today's episode was produced and edited by me. The theme music is the song A Year Ago by Nefex. If you know someone contemplating a move or visit to Portugal, please share this podcast. It's as simple as copying the link you use to access it and sharing it with others you think would benefit from it. You can find Mover Portugal Unpacked on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and Buzzsprout at tot.buzzsprout.com. A final place you can access this podcast is on the Path to Portugal community located in the School platform. That's school, SKOOL.com. On this platform, you can also access Ask Rudy, a tool to answer your most complex and simple questions about relocating to another country. If you want to understand the move abroad process, simplify the steps for efficiency, and save money, ask Rudy. And for those of us wanting this to be part of a bigger life change, the Path to Portugal community also offers the Living Brave program. This is a program offering you the tools to move forward and align your life through brave action, as well as the community, support, and accountability you've been needing. All links to all platforms can be found in today's show notes and at totspot.com. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Just a gentle reminder, Mover Portugal Unpacked is for entertainment purposes only. It should not take the place of professional or legal advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own. They reflect nothing more than that. All experiences are expressed through the filter of the individual. And hey, this is Portugal. We can all have very different experiences doing the exact same thing here. So please, do your own research and discuss your options with qualified professionals before making this or any other decision. And a final note, any opinions or thoughts expressed during this podcast are not meant to malign any group or organization. This is Melissa LaFleur. Thank you for unpacking today's portion of The Path to Portugal with me.
Way back a year ago,